For more than 100 years, one name has echoed through the foggy streets of London, right? A name that just screams terror, shadow, and steel. But what if the story we think we know is completely wrong?
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1888 London. The gas lights in Whitechapel are barely punching through this thick, soupy fog from all the coal smoke. And in these winding, dirt-poor streets, there's this feeling, this fear that's just growing and growing. Because there's a killer out there, a ghost, hunting in the shadows. I mean, everyone knows the name Jack the Ripper. It's got to be one of the most infamous names in the entire history of crime, right? We're talking about a brutal, unknown killer who absolutely terrorized an entire city and became this massive legend that's lasted for over a century.
But here's the thing, and this is really the whole point of our story today. What if the killer wasn't a Jack? What if we've been looking for the wrong person this entire time? Because, there's this theory out there, and it's backed by some really fascinating clues, even modern science, that suggests the Ripper might not have been a Jack at all.
All right, so to really dig into this theory, we've got to start with the crimes themselves. I mean, before there was this big legend, there were real people, real victims. That autumn of 1888, it was just a season of pure terror. In just a matter of weeks, bang, 5 women were brutally murdered. The attacks were so savage and they happened so fast that London was just reeling. Scotland Yard, they were completely stumped. So, the police are baffled, and they're looking for a man. But what if that was their first mistake? This is where we get to this really compelling alternative idea, the case for Jill the Ripper. So this idea really took off thanks to an author named William Stewart. He put forward this theory that the killer might have been a woman, specifically a midwife. And when you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? A midwife would have a perfectly good reason to be out on the streets late at night. She might even have blood on her clothes, and no one would think twice about it. It was the perfect cover. And the arguments for a female killer, well, they're pretty fascinating. First off, the killer clearly had some anatomical knowledge. But, and this is a big but, none of the victims were sexually assaulted. That just doesn't fit the typical profile of a male serial killer at all. Then you've got physical clues, like these small buttons from a woman's boot found right near one of the bodies. And get this, the police even had a suspect, a woman named Mary Piercy, who was later convicted for a murder that was, well, shockingly similar. Okay, so for decades, this was all just, a theory. Interesting, but just a theory. But then, modern science enters the picture. And what if we could find a clue in the killer's own words? The whole investigation got a shot in the arm from one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in the entire case, a letter that was supposedly sent by the Ripper. Now, the police were getting tons of letters from people claiming to be the Ripper, hundreds of them. But this one was different. It's known as the From Hell letter. And it wasn't just a letter. It was sent to the head of a local neighborhood watch group, and it came with a small box. Inside, half of a human kidney. The stuff written in that letter, it had details that really only the killer could have known. So the big question is, how on earth do you get evidence from a letter that's over 130 years old? Well, a DNA expert, Professor Ian Findall, got his hands on it. He very carefully took swabs from the saliva on the envelope's seal, and he used this super advanced technology, way more sensitive than what the police usually use, that can basically build a DNA profile from just a single human cell. It's incredible stuff. And what they found was absolutely stunning. From that one tiny sample of saliva, the analysis managed to create a partial DNA profile. And after more than 100 years of mystery, it pointed to a possibility that was just, wow, a total shock. The author of the From Hell letter could have been a woman. But, of course, it's never that simple, is it? The Jill theory isn't the only one that has some science backing it up. There's another famous piece of evidence from one of the crime scenes that has given us its own compelling and completely contradictory results. And this is where the mystery really turns into a scientific puzzle. So on one side, you have the DNA from the letter, and it's pointing to a woman. But on the other side, there was a shawl found near one of the victims, Catherine Eddowes. An analysis of that shawl found DNA evidence pointing to a man, a Polish barber named Aaron Kosminski. So you've got 2 pieces of forensic evidence, 2 modern scientific analyses, and 2 completely different suspects, a man and a woman. What do you do with that? So where does that leave us? With all this conflicting evidence, what are we supposed to think? Well, it kind of feels like instead of finally closing the book on Jack the Ripper, modern science has just blown it wide open to a brand new and, honestly, even more confusing chapter.
I mean, for more than a century now, the real identity of the killer has been one of history's biggest, most stubborn secrets. You've had generations of detectives, historians, armchair detectives, you name it. They've all tried to figure it out, and they've all failed. And maybe the biggest takeaway here is kind of ironic, you know? We always think of science as the thing that gives us the definitive, clear-cut answers. But in this case, it's actually made things more complicated. We now have two totally plausible suspects, both backed by DNA evidence. One man, one woman. It's made the world's most famous cold case colder than it's ever been. So it just leaves us with this one final, fascinating thought. Is it possible that the real answer, the true name of the killer who haunted those London streets, is just sitting there, locked away in a tiny fragment of DNA, a single cell on an old letter or a forgotten shawl, just waiting for the day when our technology is good enough to finally, once and for all, tell us if we should have been looking for a Jack or a Jill?